Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Susan Lynn, I'm a psychic medium. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to talk about politics. Now, I do have content on my channel that is, you might call it schizophrenic. But anyway, I do politics and then I also do spiritual videos. So if you want to see more spiritual videos, just go to my main page on YouTube and you'll see a header that says playlist, and you can find a playlist that would talk about spirit guides or just about anything you can imagine, including politics. Today, we're going to talk about Ukraine. I've got my love t-shirt on today and I've got my big ass amulet on. So you can understand today that I'm sort of bringing it, right? I'm trying to bring it because we need help, right? So Ukraine needs help. Here's where we are. Today's February 20th. Who knows what's going to happen? I can read the energy, right? I'm psychic. I can read Mr. Putin's energy. I can tell you what he's likely to do considering the energy around him. So that's not 100%. None of us are 100%, period. Because we have this thing called free will. He has free will, and so does all the people around him, including Biden in Europe and the oligarchs in Russia. So there's a lot of pressure on Mr. Putin right now to do certain things. But I'll tell you, as I go into his energy, this man is, his energy feels like he's a megalomaniac, right? He is an egotistic person. He's a person who feels that he's been wronged. He feels that things have been taken from him. He feels like his stature has been tarnished, or that he has been, I'm getting the message of someone poked the bear. Someone poked the bear. Now he's mad. Now, of course, this is all what he thinks, right? There's no actual evidence that any of this has really happened. But in his fragile ego, this is what's happened. So, it started out with what they're telling me is it started out really and truly with Obama and Hillary Clinton, who weren't big fans of him, right? That sought to put him in his place to a degree. And then he found an ally, right, in Trump. And so he was able to expand his muscle, to really flex his muscle, to show the world who he was and what he could do. Now, it was easy because Trump allowed him to do whatever he wanted to do, right? I mean, we know through a lot of evidence that there's, I just heard the word collusion, but, that to a degree still remains to be proved in a court of law. But let's talk about today. Let's fast forward. Now, of course, Putin is upset that the USSR was broken up, and this is something he's been public about. He bemoans the day that happened, okay? He wants to get all his little pieces back together. He of course wants to be a dictator or a czar. He wants to be a czar. So Ukraine is a territory, a state, a country that is now no longer his, no longer the USSR's or Russia's, as it would be called today. Number one. Number two, Ukraine has a lot of what everybody wants. Minerals, important minerals, rare minerals. Okay, so Ukraine has that going for them, good or bad. Also, Ukraine is an independent country that has proclaimed to be a democratic country. That strikes Putin wrong. It actually makes him feel threatened. As long as you're a dictator, he feels like he can work with one person, right? He can work with one dictator and strike a deal. Democracies are too unpredictable for him. He doesn't like them because they could, look at the United States. I mean, we've veered back and forth across the road between authoritarianism and democracy like a drunken man on Thursday night. So, you never know what you're going to get, right? America might veer this way and then we might veer this way. That doesn't make him feel comfortable. He doesn't know what's going to happen next. So he certainly doesn't want to have a country bordering his country that could be so changeable, right? If there's a dictator there, he can make a deal with that dictator and he knows what he's going to get. So Ukraine is a threat to him. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm hearing that also is Poland. I mean, anything that would be near the border that is not controllable in some way is a threat to him. So he is feeling, when I go into his energy, he's feeling like a man who has something to prove. We've often talked about how short he is. Diminutive is the word that they use. Diminutive. If I'm not on his unhappy list, I will be after this video. However, so he's got something to prove. Okay, so here we are. Now, what is he going to do? Well, like I said, I don't know 100% of what this man is going to do, but I will say this. I'm in agreement with Linda G, and honestly, I was also I was honored to be on a video with Lena Rodriguez and Dave Johnson and Jen's World Tarot. And we all pretty much agreed as well that this man is going to strike. Okay, last week I started hearing and feeling the energy of attack, attack, attack. Now, there's a couple of reasons why he hasn't done this yet. One is the Olympics, because when he attacks, the man is not going to be received well. Number two, he's had some issues with the weather, getting his troops in the right place and mobilizing certain heavy equipment and heavy tanks. I will also say that the last time I talked about this, and I don't remember if this was a specific video, if I was on, I don't remember, but I mentioned that his troops, look, I'm not saying his troops aren't going to fight. They're going to fight, especially if it's bombing, if it's air strikes or missiles, they're going to fight. But the troops that he has that would be infantry, that would go across the border on foot and take over cities in Ukraine, yes, they will. But I will tell you that they're in poor shape. They're in poor health. They have poor nutrition. Their psyche, they're not in this war. They're not soldiers in the sense that they're bloodthirsty and ready to fight for Mother Russia. This is not true. The truth of the matter is that they lack direction. They lack unity. They lack heart and soul in this war. Number whatever, I don't even know how many numbers I'm on now, but basically I channel these messages. Okay, so the other thing that I see is that when Ukraine split from Russia or the USSR, many people have family in Russia and vice versa. Many Russians have family in Ukraine. It's much like they're showing me the way when we really started enforcing the border along Mexico, or when Mexico and the United States split their countries, their family on either side of the border. And before we started enforcing the border, it was a dirt path. You just walked back and forth or took a little raft across the Rio Grande. People visited each other, and this is what they're showing me, is that maybe they don't visit each other as easily between Ukraine and Russia, but there's certainly a sentiment, a love. I have my aunt, my grandmother. Many people in Ukraine speak Russian. Okay, so there's the soldiers just don't have the heart, most of them, to for hand-to-hand combat. Okay, let me put it to you that way. There's also been reports, and I'll put it up on the screen here, that along the border of maybe Poland, I'll put it up here so we get clarity, that the Russian soldiers are drinking vodka and beer and just basically not being very disciplined. That would be the main thing I would say. I don't feel like his soldiers are disciplined, and I've said this before in a different video at least a week ago. So this is an energy that continues to plague that particular army. So here's what I see potentially happening. I see shelling. I see lots of shelling. I see attacks on Ukraine. Of course, there's already been a shelling on a kindergarten, and luckily those kids were not there in the kindergarten at that time. It is a building that's used for kids, but they weren't there at that time. Now, so this has already happened, but what I'm seeing is more. Now, something else I said in an earlier video was that I saw skirmishes, and I saw the skirmish happening first on the eastern side of Ukraine, where some quote-unquote separatists that support Russia, but theoretically, or not theoretically, but according to Russia, they're not Russians, they're separatists that support Russia, have taken over some of the cities. This has already been done. This is before this latest threat from Russia. These separatists have taken over these cities on the eastern part of Ukraine, and there is literally a demilitarized zone, or an area where you would have to cross a checkpoint to go into this Russian separatist held part of the country that Russia says they didn't do. But they, of course, we know that's not the case. So this is what's happening right now, is the action is happening on the eastern side of the country. However, I honestly see attacks on Ukrainian cities. I see bombing. I see destruction. I see lives lost. Now, I do see a ground offensive. They're calling it a ground offensive, and I think that that means that I see troops, Russian troops, entering Ukraine on foot, spreading out over a part of Ukraine. But I must tell you that they're not disciplined. The whole thing is just, the words ragtag come to mind. Okay, but all the same, it's an invasion. Okay, it can be ragtag and undisciplined, but it's still an invasion. You have foreign troops in your country, on foot, in tanks, shelling. That's a war. That's attack on that country. So I want to tell you the good part of this. And there is a little bit of daylight. There is a little bit of brightness to consider here. It's a terrible loss. It comes at a terrible loss. I will say that it comes at a terrible loss, because I do see destruction and I do see lives lost. Okay, and I do see, unfortunately, Ukraine struggling mightily. I don't know why they keep bringing in Poland. Anyway, let me tell you what I think is going to happen, what I see happening, what they're showing me happening. So right now, my very basic understanding is this. Russia was supplying natural gas to Germany, and that's why Germany didn't want to get involved in the beginning. And the United States came and said, look, we'll help you with your natural gas supply, but you've got to stand with us and NATO against Russia. Okay, so that happened. So then Germany came on board with NATO. Now, I did do a video about this and I talked about this, okay? So, but the thing that's important that I think we all need to understand is Germany also came on board with NATO, and of course they're a NATO country. I'm saying that came on board in support of NATO against Russia because they were holding out, but they came on board against Russia because, honestly, two things. The United States supplied gas for their heating, and number two, their citizens. Their citizens said, we're not supporting this. We don't support this. We're against Russia. We're for Ukraine. So this is the theme that I want you guys to follow as we go forward. You're going to see citizens of all these European countries come out against Russia. But you're going to see also the ruling powers, the politicians, be for Russia. Or not for Russia, maybe that's too strong of a way to say this, but for not intervening. Okay, you're going to see people come out in Europe and say, I don't know, we don't really need to get involved, or we're going to send NATO, but we're not really going to get involved. We're going to deal with this at an arm's length, right? At an arm's length, we're going to get involved. Now, why are they going to do this? Well, because Russia is commingled in their finances, that they get money from Russia, Russia banks through them, right? There's commingling of assets and money, and that's why these European countries don't want to cut Russia off. Now, this is not news. You can go back 6 months, a year, 2 years. You can find that this has been a dialogue that's been going on. People have said, you know, if these countries really didn't believe in Russia, or if these countries really believed that Russia was doing the wrong thing, they would, you know, cut ties, cut financial ties with Russia. Well, of course they're not going to cut financial ties, because what matters most to these people is money, right? So they're going to talk out of their mouth one thing, and they're going to hold their hand out and get that money regardless, even though those two things don't line up. So, but what you're going to see, this is the thing that I think, this is the whole reason I'm doing this video, because I don't do videos about things until I have something to tell you. I don't just get up here and talk about it. I wait till my guides show me something that I think is important for you to know. And I think what's important for you to know is that that picture of that kindergarten room, which was clearly a kindergarten room with a big hole in the wall from a bomb, is going to speak. You know, a picture can speak 1,000 words, and that's what's going to happen. You're going to see the citizens of Europe rise up and say no, no, and no. And they're going to go to their leaders and they're going to say, you need to do what you need to do to sanction Russia, to come out against Russia. You cannot any longer speak one message out of your mouth and another message with the money that you're collecting. We're not going to allow that anymore. Their citizens are going to be the ones that push their hand on Russia. And that is where Putin has made a big mistake. And that is why he hates democracies. Go all the way back to the beginning of the video. Because if you're dealing with a dictator, dictators control their people. You're not going to have this wishy-washy, change of opinion that actually affects the elected leaders. In this case, it is going to affect the elected leaders. And those leaders are going to get voted out if they don't toe the line of their citizens. And their citizens don't want war. Their citizens value Ukraine, see it as a civilized democracy, one that has asked for its independence and has acted repeatedly to be independent and to govern itself as a democracy, and it needs to be respected as such. Okay? So you're going to see the people of Europe stand firm against their leaders if their leaders support Russia. And that's where we're going to have some action, because if these leaders all start cutting their financial ties to Russia, it's way worse than sanctions. Sanctions really typically hurt the people, not the oligarchs, not Putin. Now, Biden brilliantly has said, I'll tie up all of Putin's money. I'll go after Putin's private banks that are held throughout the world, the money he has invested throughout the world, right? Which I think was the biggest threat and the best threat that Biden had. I think he played his best card, and he played it early. I mean, he really got in front of this and said, look, if you do this, I'm going to do that. But Biden is the president of the United States, and these banks are controlled through European banks, right? Like Switzerland, right? Sweden, who knows where. Some countries might not be democratic, might not be willing to cut ties with Putin. So Biden played his hand, but I think these European citizens are going to be the ones that tip the power quotient away from Putin. And again, Linda G, who's amazing, has been saying for years, Putin's going to run, Putin's going to run. Well, this is going to make him run. His soldiers are unfit for battle, period. He is going to do a lot of damage with shelling and bombing. But my God, the European citizens are going to rise up and smack down their leaders, which is going to cut the money supply to Putin through the oligarchs. Well, guess what? The oligarchs are not all that happy with Putin anyway, because to be honest with you, Putin's out of control. This whole thing about attacking Ukraine, the oligarchs, money likes to play both sides. They're certainly not going to stop getting their money based on some silly moral quotient, right? So they're going to play both sides to see which one is going to make a more profit. Right now, the oligarchs are playing both sides. They're allowing Putin to be his, megalomaniac self and attack Ukraine, but only to the degree that it doesn't hurt them and it gives them something. So if they get Ukraine, they get a lot of money because they get all of that rare minerals, all that money. But if they attack Ukraine and the oligarchs' bank accounts get slashed, then that's not gonna, as they say down here in Texas, that dog isn't gonna hunt. So the oligarchs are not going to be happy with Putin if he puts them in a position where they lose money. They will toss him out like yesterday's trash. They really will. So I don't see Putin winning here. I don't care what he does to Ukraine, and I'm terribly sorry. Again, wearing my love, I'm got my amulet. I'm throwing all the love I can to the Ukrainians. God bless you guys. We support you. No country should go through this. It's 2022. We don't allow rogue countries to just invade democratic countries. This is not allowed. We should all stand together against this. But whatever damage Putin does to Ukraine, it's going to be relatively confined to a few cities, an invasion, a hasty retreat. I'm not going to rule out. I mean, they're showing me America right now, and they're showing me planes. They're showing me fighter jets. I'm not going to rule out that someone meaning Republicans won't say American fighter jets shouldn't be there. But I'm going to say to you that Biden isn't going to let this happen, okay? Now, I think there's a line that Biden doesn't want to cross, and I think that's smart of him. But I'm going to tell you that this is just this is symbolism, okay? But I'm seeing a fighter jet that has USA, Air Force, or something on it, and they put a magnetic, one of those signs that you get for your car when you're in business for yourself. They put a magnetic sign over it that says NATO, right? So I'm going to say that Biden's going to blur the lines a little bit and allow more of our Air Force and some sort of ground troops to affect the outcome of this, or to at least protect. Again, Poland keeps coming back to my mind. I don't know what's going on with Poland. But maybe we station our own troops in Poland. I don't know. It's going to be a lot of blurred lines. I'm going to tell you right now, there's not going to be a straight line here. Nobody's going to be able to say, you should be here and you should be there. It's going to be blurred, because if they get near the border of one of these other countries, American troops may be there bombing. This could happen. So to wrap this up, I would tell you that, yes, I think there's going to be damage. I think that Putin is going to pay mightily. This is a loss for him. It is a loss for him. It is the end of his power in a lot of ways. Maybe not immediately, but you can certainly in the future look back to this time and say, that's where it began. That's where Putin jumped the shark. That's where Putin made the wrong decision. That's where he exhausted all of his cred in one place and failed. You know, he played all his cards and he got beat. So I do see some damage for Ukraine, and I'm terribly sorry for that. And we should absolutely pray for them. And Americans should be supporting Ukraine. Of course, we understand, I know down here in Texas that the Republicans do not support NATO, and they do not support any involvement, be it NATO or United States, involved in Ukraine. They're just as happy for Russia to just take Ukraine. It's just another example of how mind, control that these people are. That they are siding with a communist country that's taken over a democratic country. It's really a sign of sickness, in my opinion. But anyway, I hope this made sense. As I say, I channel these things. I don't know what I just said, so I think it's coherent and it makes sense. The thing that's going to happen is the European people are going to stand up. They're going to stand up, and you're going to see this, okay? You're going to visually see these people stand up. I think they will protest. I think you will see outrage. I think you will see commitment from the European people for more NATO. I will say this as well. This is obviously, we didn't have a NATO during Trump, and Biden, the first thing he did was put us back in NATO. And not only that, Biden has stepped forward as the statesman for NATO and the Western powers. And he has said, we're going to bring NATO back together, and we're going to protect ourselves. You know, I did a video, and it's labeled Biden's New World Order. And it's been 5 months, I don't know. Biden's New World Order. Boy, people gave me grief about that, because it sounded to them like Napoleon or Hitler. But the truth of the matter is, and I said it at the time, Biden's New World Order is this, that NATO is important, that we protect each other, that we band together against the bullies. You've already seen this. I've talked about this before. Biden has gone out and made pact deals, trade deals with Australia, to kind of shore each other up against China, right? So Biden is all about working with any democratic country to create a group, a cohesive group that could stand strong against these bigger countries that have so much power and money, like China, and or are bullies like Russia. So Biden's New World Order is to bring us all together. I see in his tenure as president that he's going to bring disparate countries, and I'm now seeing the continent of Africa, disparate countries together as a more cohesive group, because he understands, probably more than anybody, the threat that is China, the threat that is Russia. And he understands that we all have to stand together against these threats. So that's what I have for you about Ukraine. I do see damage, but I also see, at least it's not all for naught. It does change. There is change. There is a strengthening of the allies. There is a strengthening of the allies. And I will tell you, Putin has gone rogue. Okay, he's gone rogue. I think he's almost out of control of the oligarchs in some ways. And unless we snip these oligarchs' bank accounts, he will be something that we should worry quite a bit about. But I think the Russian citizens are going to come out and help us with this. So you know what? Send your prayers. Keep Ukraine wrapped in white light. Wrap yourself in white light. Send it out to the world. These things really help. These things really work. If we are constantly worried and constantly down and sick and disgusted, our energy is not white light. Our energy is kind of muddy, right? So what do? Get rid of it. Get rid of that energy. Worrying never solved a problem one, right? It doesn't solve anything. if you're worried about something, the best thing to do is take a moment, send some white light to it, pray about it, or take action on it, and then send it away, release it. Take it out of your energy body and release it. Because it's not going to do you any good in here. Okay? It's just not going to do you any good in here. Worrying about Ukraine is not going to help you, and it's not going to help them. But what will help them is, instead of worrying, when you realize I'm really worried about this, write your senator, write your congressman. I want you to support Ukraine. You've done something. You've done something that really might help Ukraine, to be honest with you. Say a prayer for Ukraine. Send a $5 donation to Doctors Without Borders or some other organization that may be operating within Ukraine if they experience, conditions that need their help. Now you've done things. Worrying doesn't do anything, right? So try to transmute that worry into action. And in doing so, you'll feel better about yourself, and you'll be able to release the worry, and you'll be able to really focus on your life, which is the most important thing in your life, is to focus on what's going on here, right? So I hope that's helpful for you guys. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I dearly appreciate your support. I have a lot of new subscribers. I really appreciate you guys. And obviously, I dearly love all my old subscribers. You guys are just amazing. Thank you so much. Please let me know what you think about this video in the comments. If you have any questions, I typically answer them in the comments. Please know that I have a Patreon channel that I do a lot of spiritual work on. We have a lot of really fun Zoom meetings where we talk about our spiritual abilities and psychic questions and all kinds of things like that. You can find that in the description. I offer classes. Unfortunately, they book up before I get to announce them on YouTube. Oftentimes, if you ask to be put on the mailing list for my classes, I can do that as well. You can either put that in the comments, or you can email me directly at susanlynnmedium@gmail.com. Thanks again for joining me. Let's all pray. Let's all pray for the world. Let's pray for our whole world, wrap it in love and light, and may love and light also be wrapped around you and your loved ones. Take good care. For entertainment purposes only.